So let's talk about combat for a little bit. The great thing about your character generally is going to have a static initiative stat. So oftentimes when you hear D&D 5e, you say roll for initiative. This one is just a static stat. So generally that is your equal to your perception plus agility. So generally you're going to have you're just going to be in the teens at some point, unless your perception is 4 and your agility is 4. Which I necessarily wouldn't recommend because a lot of guns use perception and you got to be fast sometimes. But that's how you set your agility. It's static unless you do something with luck-based points, or there's something story-wise that kind of changes that up. Once it's your turn, you can take some actions. Let's talk about minor actions first. So you can essentially take 2 minor actions. No, wait, you can take, excuse me. Sorry, I read ahead.
One.
You can take 1 minor action per turn, unless you have upgraded yourself in some form or fashion to take 2. Minor actions include aim, which allows you to reroll 1d20 on the first attack roll you make. You can also draw item, which is draw 1 item carried on your person or pick up any object or item within your reach. Interact, which is interact with equipment or environment in a simple way. Move, which is move up to 1 zone, any position within medium range. And take Kim, administer a dose of a Kim that you were holding, targeting yourself or a willing character within your reach. You got to be holding that Kim too. Next up, we've got major actions. The first one is assist, which you can assist another character with their next test. When the character you were assisting takes their turn and attempts their task, you can provide assistance, which is essentially adding, you roll a 1d20, and then if you get a success, you add that to their success pool. Next, you can do an attack, which is make an attack with a melee or ranged weapon. Command an NPC. If you have an allied NPC, you can essentially put them under your command. If it requires a test, there's certain tests that you can do. There's some automatic stuff, like using charisma plus speech if there's a person, charisma plus survival if they're an NPC or animal, intelligence plus science if the NPC is a robot. Defend. You focus on protecting yourself. Make an agility plus athletics test with the difficulty equal to your current defense. First aid. You try quickly to patch up the wounds of yourself or an ally. Make an intelligence plus medicine test with the difficulty equal to the number of injuries the patient has. Increase the difficulty by 1 if you are trying to perform first aid on yourself. If you succeed, you can either heal HP equal to your medicine rating, treat 1 injury the patient is suffering from, or stabilize a dying patient. You can also pass, which you can choose to do nothing. You can rally, which you grit your teeth, catch your breath, and prepare yourself. Make an endurance plus survival test with the difficulty 0, and save any action points you generate. You can also do charisma plus speech to inspire allies if you feel like it. Ready, which is describing yourself doing an action, kind of readying that action. Say, oh, when they attack, I'm going to do this thing. And it kind of sets you up so that that domino is in place the moment the situation you described happens. You can do it. Sprint, which means you can move up 2 zones. So let's say you're in long range, you want to move to close range. You can skip over that medium range and just go right to close range, or any kind of skill test associated with your turn. Let's stop right there with all of that. How often, what are the most often major and minor actions that we take generally as a group? I'm kind of thinking about it. Obviously, attack, we do a bunch of.
Yeah. So looking at minor, not a lot of us aim. I would, but my primary weapon, which is the Satch gun, which is just a modified energy weapon, has a tag on it called inaccurate, which means I cannot take the aim action with it. So I would aim, because once you're in that butter zone of the range that you need, none of the minor actions really are helpful, because usually you're moving is the main minor action, and that's going to be the same thing for any sort of tactical combat in 5th Ed, Pathfinder, Starfinder.
Right.
So if you're already in the butter zone, you don't really need to move. If you don't need to take a Kim, you're not going to use one of those. If you've got everything in your hand you need, you're fine. You don't need to interact with anything. You're basically left with aim. So that's really the only other minor action. So I would say move and aim are high up, and then draw items. So if I'm in combat and I don't have my weapon out, I've got to draw it. Or if it gets knocked out of my hand, I need to bring out a backup. Or someone's hurt, I need to draw it to be able to use it. So draw is pretty important as well, but it's a bit more situational.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as major actions, when you're in combat, attack. You're using attack pretty much all the
Using it.
time.
I think the common ones you have are attack. I know that Hazel uses a lot of first aid. Sometimes that happens during combat.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's post. And then we've had some situations where ready has been utilized.
Yeah, I would like to use ready on occasion, but that is what it is.
I haven't really thrown any combat encounters that require that. Most of
your tactical combat in 5th Ed, Pathfinder, Starfinder, where you have an actual battle grid and you're doing tactical movement, readying in action is nice because as a ranged combat user, for example, you have to worry about cover a lot.
Right.
And you have to worry about people moving in and out of cover. So you may want to use ready action. I want to go on Overwatch. So when they pop out of cover, I want to blast them. Or as a melee user, I want to ready in action. If anybody comes through my threatened area, I want to swing at them because once you move, maybe you're not close enough, but you know that enemies are going to get close enough. So you want to retain that major action. And that's just a way to gamify that clash a little bit if you're not doing something where everybody moves first and everybody attacks simultaneously.
Where this one is more like a traditional like turn-based RPG where you're just like in 3 ranges. Like generally, even when I set up like a battle grid, my grids are like you have the party on the right side and the monster on the left side, and I adjust their range based on like their proximity to the monster rather than the monster. Like there's not like a giant grid where you're moving a bunch of stuff. It's really from like a player perspective, which makes combat a little bit faster. That way you don't have to do a lot of like all of the like situational and positioning is all theater of the mind at that point of like trying to figure that out. Which I know a lot of people, typically when I do D&D, I like to do a dungeon and it's like, hey, you're in a dungeon. Here's the room. Here's the situation. Where are you in here? Oh, the party split up. There's an enemy on this side. Like there is like, to me, it's always been okay. Well, if you're going to play D&D, play D&D.
Right.
Whereas
there's some interesting things you could do with ready in action. So you can choose any major action to perform, and then once it triggers, you do it. So you could ready in action to sprint if the Yao gets close enough. So the Yao just spin a turn to get close to you. I'm going to run away 2 zones. I'm just going to keep running away, and I'm just going to kite this thing away, and that's what my turn is. You could ready an action to attack once something's in close range because maybe you've already moved as close as you can, or you've got an advantageous position, and you want to reduce the difficulty down because of the range increment, so you can wait until something gets in range.
Yeah, let's say in that Yao Guai attack, if you're like injured and you have a stim pack on hand, it's like, okay, I want to make sure that I take my stim pack, so I'm going to use my minor action to stim pack myself, and then I'm going to ready an action that says if the Yao Guai tries to attack me, I'm going to move to long range at that point.
Yeah, and then you can just kind of kite it. Plus, depending on how that action works out, you may have just wasted that Yao Guai's turn. So if you've got a spread out party, for example, and it decides to go after Steve, and Steve decides, I'm just going to run away.
Right.
And the Yao Guai now has no target. It either has to use its major action to move again or sit there and take it. As far as the other major actions, we've used assist, but outside of combat. We've tried using command and NPC before, and it's never really worked out to our advantage. First aid, Hazel will use quite a bit. Rally, I don't think we've ever touched. Rally is one of those things where I would probably rather try to make an attack and generate AP that way than, spend a turn trying to generate AP later. There might be situations where if I can generate 2 group AP and Clark gets an extra attack, that might be better than me attacking right now. So if you were unarmed and couldn't do anything else, Rally is a good support move. That like if I think of Lonnie in a completely disarmed and hardly any medicine. Rally might be a good use of their skills just because you can try to generate some AP for the other party member so they can do work.
And if you're rolling, like, if your focus is like, okay, I want to make my guy a smooth talker, like, I want to make sure my character is absolutely able to talk his way out of absolutely everything, you're not going to really focus on putting a lot of perks or skills into your weapons. And so maybe it's beneficial for you to rally at the beginning, like use a charisma plus speech test at a difficulty 0, get that AP, and say, okay, now I can pull off some moves because I'll have some more AP to burn and some more dice to have, so that, oh, I only have like a pipe pistol that only does 2 damage dice. I can add a number of damage dice on there based on the amount of AP I generate. So my weapons are stronger based on just doing that rally.
Or put it in the group pool, and your big hitter, if they have 2 AP that they can pull from the group pool, they just got an extra attack. And who made that extra attack? I did, because you wouldn't have been able to have done it unless I rallied you. So that's my damage.
Essentially, we're describing a hype man at this point, which
it is. It's as close to a bard as you're going to get in combat without any type of magic or battleground.
I think that could work.
Control.
I think that could work. You'd have to have more than 3 players, but I think that a bard could, like a Fallout bard of some sort, could work pretty well.
Yeah, hype man, just to generate AP and to do your medicine and stuff like that.
Yep.
Just support there. I think
constantly moving zones.
Yeah.
Minor action to move one zone and then do a rally. Come on, guys.
I'm going to ready an action to run. I'm going to provoke this dude, and then I'm going to ready an action to run away from him. And then y'all just shoot. It's fine.
Yeah. I love it.